Productions. My name is Ross Barclay-Simpson. I'll be your host this evening. And unfortunately, Sandra Godley can't be with us tonight. I know some of you will have been expecting to see her, and she sends her apologies. The work we will hear tonight is on the themes of DNA and genetics, what we understand by it, and the insights we learn through poetry and the visual arts. Welcome to our studio audience and our many poets here at the Helen Martin Studio at Warwick Arts Centre, and also to those of you joining us at home. You're all very welcome. This event is being recorded and will be available in the coming days from the Stamp website. That's www.stampproductions.co.uk, and Stamp Productions has one P in the middle. Can I just say to our studio audience and perhaps to some of our poets, can we make sure that phones are off, please, at this point? Thank you. We'll get to our first poet very shortly, but first we want to give you a very brief explanation of how this evening came about, which has a lot to do with an art installation called iDNA. More about that in just a second. Our first speaker, hopefully, will be joining us online. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Felicity Boardman, who is Professor of Social Science and Genomics at the University of Warwick. Her research focuses on exploring some of the social and ethical quandaries that new genetic technologies bring up. Professor Boardman, are you here? There you are.
Hello. Yes, I am. Hello.
Hello, Professor. Can you tell us briefly about the research which has informed the installation iDNA at Leamington Art Gallery, which in turn has inspired the poetry we'll hear tonight?
Yeah, of course. So this project is about getting a better understanding of what people living with genetic conditions think about genomic medicine. So as genomic medicine is expanding, its capacity to identify, predict and also prevent genetic conditions is ever expanding, and genetic conditions are always manifested in people, and I was interested in those people's stories, people living with genetic conditions, their views on the expansion of genomic technologies, and their reflections on what it means to live with a genetic condition.
Thank you. And in terms of this evening and the poetry night, why are creative outputs important to this research?
Well, I think they bring this research just to different audiences. So people engage perhaps very differently with a piece of art than they would a research paper. So it's about bringing it to different people, but it's also, I suppose, the way that you engage with it as well is very different. So the way that you might engage with a piece of music, or in this case, poetry, it's a very sort of visceral experience. It's sort of has capacity to provoke responses, thoughts and emotions that perhaps a research paper can't do. So it's about reaching new audiences and reaching them in different ways that is possible purely through an academic paper.
Thank you so much, Professor Boardman, for joining us. In the studio, we have our next speaker, and that is Claudette Bryanston. She's the Artistic Director of Stamp Theatre and Media Productions. Hello, Claudette.
Hi, thank you, Ross, thank you.
Claudette, could you tell us what the installation consists of and how this poetry event came to be?
Yes, of course. Well, obviously the installation began with Felicity's research. How to represent the stories of people who had a wide response to their genetic conditions was certainly challenging. It was always to be a soundscape, and in my theatre practice, I've explored the use of verbatim text and learnt how very powerful it is. It seemed impossible to create something about genetics without the iconic image of the DNA image, the double helix. I felt it should be huge, possibly, of course, because these cells are so tiny. With the designer, we looked at the shape, and she had to unravel the arms of the ladder. If you think of the twisted ladder, she had to unravel them in order to support the structure, which is about 3.5, nearly 4 meters high. We realized that we had replicated exactly what the molecular biologists do to identify the structure within the DNA to track viruses, very topical for now, or for genetic manipulation. We had denatured the structure. Denaturing seems to be an extraordinary term, both terrifying and astonishing. So our helix is in the process of being denatured with it, and on its rungs are hung bright, cheerful baggage to depict a journey. I wanted the journey to feel very contemporary, and this is the science of now. So one enters the installation through a scanner, which you could suppose is scanning your identity before your journey. Also, you enter a portal, another world, the world of this installation. The monitors sing their stories to you, and a myriad of faces appear on the screens. We've just had a moment of that before we started. There are you and me. We all carry our genetic baggage. The installation is an opportunity, and we have created a number of events using the installation as a springboard for different creative outputs, including an invisible theatre event, a family project, and this finale to share an evening of poetry on some of the themes that we explored. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudette. Now, as I mentioned at the start, I'm a last-minute replacement presenter, so it's just by happy coincidence that actually I already saw the installation in Birmingham a short while ago. So if you get a chance to see it at Leamington Art Gallery, then please do. And now on to our first poet. Nigel Hutchinson has not only collated the work in the anthology and the poems you will hear tonight, but also ran 2 workshops in Leamington Art Gallery to enthuse and inspire the writing of that poetry. Nigel is himself a fine artist as well as a local poet. He's written extensively from the visual arts, including a series of poems about the sculpture trail based here at the University of Warwick. Tonight, we will hear the poems that were inspired by the installation and the workshops at Leamington Art Gallery. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nigel Hutchinson.
Thank you. Percentages. I'm 60% banana, 99% gorilla, 98.5% chimpanzee, 99% like every other human being. Our instructions have been to the sun and back 68, 69, almost 70 times. Speaking my DNA, letter by letter, would take more than 100 years. Any errors, spelling mistakes. Most you'll not notice, some you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. And our second poet will hopefully be joining us from online. This is Gareth Harewood. Gareth, are you there? No? Okay, we're moving on. That's only the second time, unfortunately, we've moved to online, but we've lost one. Okay, Sujatha Menon. Sujatha is an experienced poet and writer, and it's a pleasure to have Sujatha with us. She's reading several of her poems that probe notions of what might be genetically inherited and what we carry deep within us. Sujatha.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and hello, everyone online. This is the first of 5 poems, and this first one is called Microbells. Deep in the biome of the belly live the soft creatures of your body, coated in the flora that people obsess about. Antibiotics destroy fauna too, which to this day remain undetected by a microscope. So let me tell you about these quick and mighty instincts. Some pets, some beasts, all beautiful and all deserving of further scientific inquiry. A. First, there is the matriarch swan that glides along the cavity walls. When alarmed, her wings start to stutter. But say your appendix explodes, her feathers will stick together and you will not be warned. B. Beneath the diaphragm is a half-sleeping sloth, its belly in your belly like a Russian doll or a spy, one eye, keeping watch on the aorta, which may start to bulge. If this occurs, he will butt the roof. It's just a little nudge to make you breathe quicker. C. The bowels are a pongy abode, but butterflies smell with their feet, so have no need for a nose. Being perfectly placed to rule in such squalor, your monarchs have no qualms about sending messages to your bum. D. The pancreas, kidney, liver and spleen are all known for their cancerous gossip and filthy habit of dumping emotions into any vein that can be found. This is why fish have evolved to breathe in blue blood. On reaching the heart, all anger dissolves and expels from the lungs. This is why we sometimes find ourselves shouting, but don't realise we are shouting. It's all going on in the biome of the belly, where beauty is hidden within the beast, and the beast is always hiding. So the second poem is called Wild to the Bone. Jaya Marie lay curled up in the liver, yellow couturied and pissed all week from Friday night wine. Jaya, victorious, Marie, meaning rebellious, perfectly describes the flight and flow of her army, marching stitch by stitch to old thatches of bone, long laid to rest in another life. Those skeletons were rising, were up for a fight, and so the battle began between what was lost and what was just beginning. Wound by wound, each exposed to the whims of a headless knight, and as deep as his sinewy sword, she counted up all future fuck-ups and lived happily ever after, on finding they were all genetic. D, drunk, N, not, A, arsehold, DNA, drunk, not arsehold. The next poem is called Telescopic Bronchi. Air has ways of seeing the trajectories of you propulsed down the branches of each breath, swaying in a storm of stars, that brief electrical rasp trailing to the edge of exhale. This is where we meet, an exchange of old for new whispers that rise to rattle the genie of the throat. This is how we replicate through song. This is how song coats the pip of an ancient spell. This is how to dissolve through the membrane of now and then, to reach the moon of every cell, luminescing like the reflections in our foremother's eyes. What shall I call this galaxy of ours, held together by the forces of me's and you's, birthed like a planetary cloning? Or do we remain unnamed, leaving room for a future shining that no word could ever catch? For now, use this chant to guide you on your way. Swallow the hollow brick road, swallow the hollow brick road, swallow, 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 then turn left and turn right. You have reached your constellation. Fourth poem is called Ligatures. Fatter, wider, longer we loom as the bangles of our grandmothers shrink to the size of a ring, that although old and borrowed, turn our fingers blue. On the day I was bandaged in sari and gold to stop the ways of the new from leaking, a fine tinkle of a tune rung its song around my neck and across the cut of each starving ankle. Old blood and new money dripped. Step by step, fresh to the banquet, filled with big bellies of rice, freshly squeezed into gastric bands that I wished were tight muzzles. Surgery is not an option for the tug in my tummy that knows knots are used for the preservation of life, as well as strangulation and the ties of tradition. There are other ways to release our throats and fork our tongues, just as there are other ways to evolve and unravel using scissors instead of a scalpel. And the final poem is called Appendix. Sleep will be the one to shatter this sack, not on my back. A dream of Gary glittering is really Semtex spraying its swan song in graffiti yellow and green, clogging the cogs of my ticking machine. I was only 6 when the surgeon told me I nearly died and prescribed something for night terrors, day tremors, aches that would turn into years. Then he took out the terrorist in my tummy, forgetting to leave its conviction already rooted to the bone. Hence, 40-odd years not believing I could do anything right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujatha, and thank you for being ready when we couldn't get through to someone online. We're going to try another time to get through to someone online. Do we have Thea Nikolai?
Yes.
Hello,
Can
Thea.
you-
Am I saying your name correctly?
It's Thea Nikolaev, but that's
Thea.
perfect.
Okay, Thea, thank you. Okay, and I'll hand over to you and you can introduce your poem yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's such an honor, and I have adored every single poem that has been read so far. My poem is called New Moon, and it's about ancestral trauma and just the baggage that is stored within our bodies. Here we go. New Moon. With salt and moon water dripping from my fingertips, I unearth eons of the shame carved into my breast. I unearth eons of the shame carried by my mother and my grandmother in their breasts. I unearth eons of the shame that poured inside of me for the female line of my ancestors. Please glued to my lips, I unearth the shame held within me by gliding salt and moon water into my body until my skin bleeds and moonlight pours through the cracks. Under the moon flare, the sacred and the profane meld into unity, and my womb reveals itself to me as holy. As the sun rises, scintillating gold coats my shame into warmth, and my ancestresses come to rest within me. At dawn, I ask my body for forgiveness. Thank you. This was it.
Thank you so much for joining us there. Asa Ghassan considers the genetics of the circle of life. Asa.
Evening. I've got two poems this evening. This is Our Land in the Making. Procedure. One. Procedure. The past is all there can be, with agricultural brow under my breath, I ride well-saddled tongue. 2. Exercise. Take vitamin D. Smear yourself in bifidus. I am all England between the sheets. 3. Told dead, they envy your retinas. Inspect as you ejaculate. No release. Ignite in the face of your offspring. And my second poem is called All in the Way She Chose. Things killed, only to pass through us, reconstituted soon as new life form, subsiding eventually into crude oil. Ours is to be recalled as a sentence or two passed down.
Thank you, Asa. Liz Jolly reflects on her heritage and that which carves her identity. Liz Jolly.
Thank you. The first poem I'm going to read was inspired by the workshop we did with Nigel, where he had us writing about bananas. D-A-N-A-N-A. Me, the portion which is apart from the hand that cleaved it, past ripe, flat brown archipelagos of independence, travelled far to be where we are now. The curve, a scowl or smile, depending on the other's viewpoint. Salt. Rime drying in the hagstone's eye, tang of a lover's skin, the bite of manzanilla, the hard-baked crackers crack, Lancashire crumbling creamily off the block, Squaddy's curse and a well-turned insult. Blood and tears of my children's birth, my father's death, the ocean, the ocean, the ocean. Thoughts on an apple. Red, delicious, Braeburn, russet, Chivers delight, Egremont, Spartan, Gala, Worcester, Pearmain, ciderous, sweet, wrinkled, palm and pocket-sized, scions slipped onto old stock, and bred rough and refined, unravelling back down long and winding country lanes to the oldest apple tree in the world, a bright Ygritte sill. My stock. The women looked after the children of others and their own. The men went underground to hack out someone else's coal. Women made food for feeding the hunger of others and of their own. Men walked country miles to plant and plough someone else's land. Women drew water and brewed beer to slake the thirsts of others and of those of their own. The men hauled and reefed canvas to sail on someone else's ships to someone else's land and were taught to think of it as their flag's own. The women kept clean the homes of others and of their own. The women gave up their names and made their husbands their own. The parents of both my mother and my father owned a home of their own. And I have books, a home, a name, children, travels, a garden and freedom, all my own. The porcelain jar. Little coiling fish swim up and still, blue beneath the gleam, waiting under the glaze of the ginger jar. Later, I will touch the back of your neck. Today, my father's mother stood upright behind the dining chair, watching my pregnant daughter, in the same way she had watched me when she lived and breathed. I love you is not so very much to say. If I had to be a vessel, I would not choose to be porcelain, but this loosely painted stoneware one, offering a hollow of slow, spiraling green. Every day, space and time to be full and full again. Sit now and eat with me. There are many that I love.
That was Liz Jolly. Thank you very much, Liz. Peter Cross was inspired to attend Nigel's workshop as he's lectured on the topic of DNA and is fascinated by the vast amount of yet unknown knowledge within the DNA structure. Maybe bananas have the answer. Peter Cross.
The banana DNA song. I like bananas, but cannot spell their name. Bananas grow. We grow. Bananas catch colds. We catch colds. Bananas reproduce. We reproduce. Bananas have skin. We have skin. Do bananas feel? Bananas communicate through their roots. We communicate. Banana trees make oxygen. We take oxygen. We are partners. Bananas have cells. We have about 6 billion. Bananas have a mitochondria. We have a mitochondria. The mitochondria is essential. It's a good virus, and it's essential for life and reproduction. We have 60% of our genes in common. We have 20% of genes in common. Bananas have eons of evolution. We have eons of evolution. But my dyslexia came from my dad.
Thank you, Peter. For some, the glory of the sun can hold unexpected terrors. Not all skin cancers are genetic, but some are. Joining us online, we hope, is Maria Stutterford. Hello, Maria.
Hello, and thank you.
Thank you. When you're ready. Thanks, Maria.
Sun, shadow, shade. Each morning I rise, eager for your glowing face. I draw up the blinds and give thanks each time you are there to greet me. Many days I awaken before you. The best days are those where I can sit undistracted by to-do, reading, glancing out the corner of my eye, while you slowly stretch your red, orange, yellow display across my world. I have rituals to honor you. In the dark of the African morning, we are first to the gate. We give thanks for your ability to awaken the creatures we share this place with and the light you give us. With a press and a click, we pixelate the moments, and later the image is carried into our memories and home to remind us of the morning we share with you. But all too soon your rays are altered. No longer gentle, warm caresses, now stinging, burning, harming. Who are you? Why do you do this? I have greeted you with joy and trust. I have praised you. I have looked with love upon the world and been thankful for all that you grow, nurture, enlighten. Why now turn against me? Why so violently show your power to me? I know you. You do not have to scorch your imprints onto my skin. As your rays rise, the shadows lengthen. Is this continuing foreboding? No, not shadows of darkness, not patches of fear and grey voice. No, this is shade, shade which you have made. You created the sun and the shade. You created sorrow and joy. You created suffering and peace. You created sadness and love. The cool protection of your wings are the reminder that I was too quick to rage against you. As you journey to leave me, to rise on another window, you display your glorious purple, blue, pink Technicolor farewell. I have seen your mercy in the world. I have tasted the sweet mango of your rays. I have smelt the dust of the midday heat. I have heard you awaken the creatures and send them to sleep. I have felt the shade of your embrace. I have rejoiced in your presence. I know I will once again eagerly await you. I know you will return to watch over me.
Thank you very much for joining us, Maria. Lucy Jeans's first poem is called Opposites. The installation by Stamp, iDNA, has at its centrepiece a double helix. This iconic image represents the double-stranded DNA. Although Francis Crick and James Watson famously got the credit for unravelling the mystery of DNA, it was in fact Rosalind Franklin who first photographed DNA and was central to its molecular understanding. She was only credited after her death. This is Lucy Jeans.
Hello. I've got two poems this evening. The first one is called Opposites. I could argue it's a waste of my ink to write of Fennel, pantomimes or Battenberg when my pen is yearning for cheese, sabotage and the coast of Brittany. Early over late, wine over whiskey, salty over sweet, everything is relative. Each must have its opposite, the inevitable spiral of joy and grief, earth and air, darkness and light held in tension, our double helix of life. And my second poem is called Advice to a Young Banana. 60% of our DNA, as Nigel said, is shared with the banana. I am banana. I am more banana than not, sharing your journey from firm green youth, ripening to a short instant of perfection, the knife edge between unreadiness and decay, waiting half a lifetime for the moment when things feel right, realising I'd already crested the brow of that hill, yearning in the rear-view mirror for the top of the curve when I was too busy living to seize the day. Do not hold your breath in waiting, green banana, hanging dark in your warehouse with only the spiders to listen to your tales of sun and turquoise sky. Run for it, break out, split. Dance while your limbs are strong and taut. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Matt Black's work is not in our anthologies, he's still working on it, but we're delighted that he's happy to share his work in progress. A Dictionary with a Difference. Matt Black.
Hiya. So this is a few entries from a dictionary of caring for elderly parents, sibling rivalries and interesting battles for chattels. A. Antiques Roadshow. Useful Sunday night telly for bringing elder being cared for parent and old but doing the caring child together. In well-off families, this programme may help with valuations on chattels. Other useful telly, see Strictly Come Dancing. Adults, who we might be, but who we might not always be. Adult children, childish adults, children who are adults, etc. To save confusion, try and avoid this term in family discussions. Butterfly, as in the theory that a very simple event like the wings of a butterfly can cause ripples in far-off countries and down the years as well, may explain how a moment that happened between siblings in the 1970s might be remembered 45 years later. For example, see pin. Can't visit this month. I'm too busy with work, going to a wedding. I don't really like seeing him like that. I'm going away for 2 months. Chattels. Once you die, everything you own becomes chattels. All that shopping, this house full of pictures, stones, spoons, chisels, old books, the family teapot, family stories and disputable histories. Dementia. The bus journey period when he always takes with him a pre-decimal, old-fashioned large penny to give the bus driver. Here, he says, look, it's the Queen. Wonderful woman, same age as me. She wasn't. DNA. Do we really all share the same DNA? So why aren't we all looking after him then? E. Everybody. Seems to know in long emails, sometimes in capital letters, the right way to care for the aged parent. E. Every time. Every time I get ready to leave, he tells the carer to stay in the house, follows me down the road and wants to get in the car with me. Can I come to your house, he says. FFS, for fuck's sake. Useful expression for dealing with siblings, social workers and drain inspectors. F, false teeth. 5 sets, old, yellow, kept in the top drawer of the chest of drawers. That's what I'm going to leave you, he used to say, laughing. I, if my sister gets the teapot, I shall be so angry. L, looking after, the theory that you hear and that you do want to believe that looking after your mum and dad in their later years is a journey of great richness and beauty. C, wiping father's arse. Locks. Locks changed overnight on the front door and rules created that entry to the house can only be with permission from all siblings and accompanied by an executor and for stated reasons. P, pin. The one used by one sister to make holes in another sister's Durex. Theatre, T. The comfort that this family drama may be outside our control, as old as Greek theatre, as forever as the hills, that we are souls in the grip of forces beyond ourselves. W, wiping father's arse. It is actually okay if cleaning up and wiping your father's wrinkly, hairy, shitty, incontinent 90-year-old arse is the boundary of your love. Will this teapot replace the love you never gave me? Would have been easier if you'd included all your children in your will, Dad. Why? Zeds. Getting his vinyl Zeds, he snored like a giant for his last 2 days. We gathered round his bed and sang No Woman, No Cry. He could not speak, but he wiggled his toes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Matt Black. The next poem by Sally Tissington gives away her attendance at Nigel's workshop and the ongoing fascination with bananas. Sally Tissington.
Hi, I've got 3 poems to share tonight. How to be a barometer. When you uncover a wandering spider concealed in banana bunches in the supermarket of your imagination, it's tempting to yell violently and step backwards. How did the creature slip through? After all the work you've done, fumigating your own mind, after hours of meditation? Was there a spider-shaped gap in your positive thinking? This isn't the time for logic, and it never was. Trust that the fruit is still good and the spider has interesting things to say. Having hitchhiked from Colombia on a boat. 11 days in a crate on the ocean, practicing her weatherglass skills. Tiny, sensitive, hair-covered feet, anticipating the ocean's moods. Knowing, not guessing how the water will move. If you accept the spider's unconventional good looks, she might show you how to be a barometer in your own life. The second one's called Shy of Holding One Another's Hands. They gave the grandfather her English exercise book to inspect, hoping to squeeze a kind comment from him. He showed no interest in the story content, focusing instead on her scrawl on the page. Her letters were shy of holding one another's hands. Every attempt to join them up led to awkward collisions, so that even the letter's parents couldn't recognise their own kin, whose teenage legs and feet dangled where they shouldn't into water on the lines below. His own handwriting had saved him. At 14, he'd left school and was down the mines. By 16, he'd risen to the surface, allowed to do administration because of his prize-winning cursive script. Her own handwriting still hasn't grown up, but the stories have. It's not just handwriting that can rescue people from a life underground. And my final one is called Hand Me Down. You spoke in oranges, fruit handed down to us kids from the door of your caravan, raised on stilts. We once came into your home, left a flawless blue day behind for drawn curtains and paraffin lamps. We waited for our eyes to adjust and then marvelled at the supernatural shine from your cat's coats, whose gleam was an endorsement of daily blood-rich liver, not ordinary tinned food. Your cat said you could spend your money how you wanted, and it was none of anybody else's business, as they waved across the garden, like seaweed in the sea. No such fluidity with your driving. Don't stand behind her while she's reversing. It was said that you could never get that car out of second gear. Now that I'm interested in hearing the full story, there's no one tall enough to reach the shelf. I think you had scars on your face. What happened to your fancy carpet life? Please hand me down an orange. I want to see if the oranges were huge or if it was just that our hands were small. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally Tissington. Randia Orlock is sharing with us her heritage and its legacy, which have imparted profound gender trauma and healing. Randia.
Thank you, and good evening to you all. I'm going to be reading 3 poems. The first is called The Temperamental Sati Gene, and by way of a reminder, Sati is the traditional practice in India where widows threw themselves on their husband's funeral pyre. So, the temperamental Sati Gene. Her beauty rare was fragrantly fair, with honeysuckle eyes and jasmine oiled hair. Her heart ripped apart by piercing shards of misery thrown at her heavily hard. Chachiji's pink chunni swayed her from the stairs. Mummy G's limp life, like dropped china broke, casually ground down by the social yoke. She sought salvation on the London road. The waltzing wheel smashed through her inner load. As his footsteps fast faded, she never spoke. Poor Bindi, her life was never her own, shedding millions of tears before she was done. She disarmed the sadness of her small town life in stoic silence like a leftover wife, and drowned in her own vomit and pills and rum. Kamala lit divas daily like days of old. She put on her bangles of warming gold, then showered in a tub with a gallon of fuel, and lit a match to end her delirious duel, to put an end to the piranhas gutting her cold. So, on to the second piece that I'm going to read for you, and it is called The Misfortunes of a Jat Girl Child. While the watered-down women wearily wept, the elders smiled and said you were blessed. As Bibiji wet and washed your head at the greening pond where fat flies fed, and bitter black buffalo rolled and wallowed, snortingly puffing the water they'd swallowed. The sacred village sant patted your head, and in your tiny hand your Kesmet read. He named you Bago and said you were blessed, and despite Jat ways should be blessedly kept. And the final one is called It's What We Women Be. We are proud Punjabis in our salwar and kameez. We are justly Jattis reared on dal and rotis. We are strong Sikhi, fierce fighting for identity. Always selfless in seva, given never to waver, and must self-sacrifice if that is the price of izzat and honor. Virtues woven in her.
Thank you, Randir. Kirsty Brewerton is not able to be with us tonight, but thankfully Claudette from Stamp is going to read her poem. The themes of this collection of poems, identity, individuality, and DNA, are sharply brought to focus in this next poem. None of us fit into a neat tick box, and yet we are often required to be made to fit. Thank you, Claudette.
Thank you, Ross. Yes, I sort of felt a particular kinship with this poem. I never know which box to tick. I just like to put human race tick. However, this is Kirsty's poem, and I hope, Kirsty, if you're watching, I'm doing it justice. The box. Which box to tick? White British or mixed? Neither accurately depict my true heritage, so I ponder. So I sit, ponder which to pick. You see, if you look at me, I'm white. My hide hides, it belies and denies me of my pride. I'm diluted, my roots muted, genealogy convoluted, so who am I? I remember a conversation trying to give an explanation of how an African tribal princess was my relation. Why aren't you more black? I've often wondered that myself. But history proves my family respected humanity despite society demonstrating racial bigotry. Fitting that Coventry is my home, I'm literally the epitome of two-tone. So me being the third generation with parents black mixed and Caucasian, I was reduced to an equation or a fraction. So does that make you a quarter black? Fuck knows, I hate maths. Nah, I think she's an eighth. Does it really matter, mate? My heritage isn't up for debate. You would have hoped these days we wouldn't still marginalised by race. I'm forced into a box because people still discriminate. Reduced to statistics using innate characteristics. Why? In the name of equality, which I agree is important to achieve if only we practice what we preach, it would be a practice we wouldn't need. Where does that leave me? Do I fit your brief? What's my box? What's my label? Where's my place at your table? My fear by saying I'm mixed race, I'd be accused of trying to culturally appropriate. Am I a fraud? Or an imposter? Wait, I'll ask. Excuse me, you see my identity? I think I've lost her. Oh, can't you see she's with those that look like she? In the white and privileged section, but that's only my reflection, only one extension, only one dimension, like the box.
Thank you for reading, Claudette. We also have someone else missing. Alexandra Johnson has got some form of horrible tonsillitis. I hope you're well now, Alexandra. I hope you're getting well. We have Catherine Elliott Kemp from Stamp, who's going to read in for us. Thank you, Catherine. As Professor Boardman's research demonstrates, a genetic condition can be passed from generation to generation. If you haven't had the opportunity to listen to the soundscape, which is part of iDNA, the installation, the voices are all drawn directly from the research. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Ross. So this is Familial Tree by Alexandra Johnson. You can see her legacy. Red curls, long fingers, bright blue eyes and the roll of the tongue. His shows up in the shovel hands and green iris. Where they meet, fast brains chase letters that bounce as numbers slide. The photographic memory fades to sepia. Plaques stack to erase the connections. A generation below the synapses double fire. Sensors overwhelmed, language hides behind the thoughts. IQs soar, shapes bounce flavor, and the colors of words echo. The multitudes of A's, C's, and G and T's combine, control, and determine. The double helix finds its target. The viral spiral of Fragile X. Their destiny written on the curls of the gene. On each generation, their imprint seen.
Thank you, Catherine. The installation is hung with baggage to both represent the nucleotides and as a simple metaphor to describe the baggage we carry on our journey of life. This is Nina Lewis.
Thank you, Ross, and good evening. This is called Claim on Baggage. Two chains coil around each other, the curved test of recognition. Baggage clumps, all blue cases look the same. Search for ribbon, braid, band, or locket, whichever unique identifier you had the foresight to attach. Unless the aid memoir has tangled, become detached. Baggage clumps, all red cases look the same. Then you spot it. With inherited labels, tape like toxic warning has been wrapped across the seal and a small scribble notifies of a malfunction in the system. It still feels heavy as you lift it, but you worry there may be missing items. There are problems with the language. You don't complain straight away. The plaque says lost. The man looks it, has little recognition from your display, your incapacity to perform gestures. It's a risk factor of travel. Your luggage and you, small molecules of life. And this one's called In Hold. There was a high degree of uncertainty in those early days of slope. The loss of bearings, the bumps, the calendar displaying the wrong month, the gas fire left on when you went out walking. Concave in armchair, resting in the architecture of your environment. Disorganized papers and a multi-level system none of the rest of us understood. Your lounge of component parts. For a while, you conveyed slight recognition as you lived with degeneration. The one case left, circling the belt, waiting for collection until we could oversee movement, form the long oval of support, deliver you to your onward destination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, hopefully, we have a guest speaker. Ben Jack Nash is a British visual artist based in Strasbourg, France. His work extends across sculpture, large-scale installations, video and performance, which he exhibits both nationally and internationally. His work centres around transitions taking place in different states of matter and how these translate into social contexts. His recent cross-disciplinary installation, Artists in the President's Cabinet, honed in on the changing role of artists and whether they can be considered as experts similar to a scientist, economist, or historian. Ben, are you there?
I am.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you very much.
Good. Considering iDNA and the interplay between poetry, art, and science, why would you say, as a practicing visual artist, this relationship is important?
Well, I've been thinking about why it's important, you know, and the synergy to take place between art, poetry, and scientific research, as we've been seeing with iDNA. And really, for me, a lot of it comes down to metaphor and how, when something's expressed metaphorically speaking, it has this sort of almost unique ability to extend into a dimension which is neither literal nor experiential, but is its own universe in its own right. And this is especially important given how grounded scientific research is and perhaps needs to be in the literal dimension. So what the visual art and poetry and other artistic medium can do is to take these subjects which are framed in literal and functional language and really convert them into a language which is less constrained by the same limits and structural rigidities, this more metaphorical one. And once it's in this form, not only can it then sort of morph and open up into a whole new state of being, but given its far more abstract nature, it now sort of has the potential to reach a range of spectators, whatever their personal history, and connect with them in a way of their own subjective choosing.
Thank you. And how else do you think this relationship could be explored? Obviously, we've seen it explored through poetry tonight, but I'm sure that there are many, many different ways it can be explored.
Well, I mean, of course, we've already seen how successful exploring it through the visual arts has been, and as we've seen through the iDNA installation. But it follows on from, I suppose, for me, it follows on from this idea of abstract nature and concerns the question of identity, which on the one hand, DNA and genetics tells us is unique to each individual, but on the other hand, it tells us that it's an amalgamation of other external influences. And I think there's this confluence between individualism and the collective, which resonates very strongly with me, and particularly the idea that many phenomena which have a profound influence on our lives have been sort of shifting their state and identity in an accelerated rate from one which is, you know, perhaps more individualistic and inward looking towards one which is sort of more expansive and integrates more seamlessly with its surrounding environment. And it's a process which encapsulates sort of a lot of things that goes, you know, even beyond DNA and genetics, and we see it sort of happening also in terms of other phenomena like in climate change, populism, and the pandemic, amongst others.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really pleased to hear you, and I'm so pleased that you're the last online link, so the pressure is now off. Thank you very much for joining.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't suppose we have Graham Harewood. We don't. If you folks don't mind, I thought it was a great poem, so I'll just read it out. It's only short. Okay, let's whack that one in there. So this is by Graham Harewood. It's called Man Up. A boy, a child, my world is a light, repeatedly giving birth to new sensations, perennial laughs, connections of hope, and, let's not forget, the intermittent vexations. Flashes of pain, whose visits frequent. He can hook me down to the canvas, coiled and bent. Man up, the cries float aloud. I'm just a boy, yet I must be a man, must make him proud. I'm just a boy, but dare not run like a girl, I master. Dad wants me to win, yet Jessica's gait is faster. What is awry? I do not see. Is not mummy just as good as thee? You chose her, you love her, yet she is a she. Man up makes no sense to me. Please do explain, old man, as I just do not get why your superiority of alpha causes so much regret. Man up. If I stay as me, disappointment bruises your psyche. Teach me and lead me, not treat me this way. What next? Son, don't be so gay. That was Gareth Harewood. And for our last set of poems, I'm delighted to ask Nigel Hutchinson back to the mic. Nigel, come on up. Thank you.
This first one is again related to the film. So elements of this are what people said in the film in a scrambled form. So I wonder, a conversation caught in passing on a reel of film inside your head, on repeat, wondering. You do get good days, although I've been poorly all my life. I suppose we wonder, that's not me at all. I think they should hear positive stories. I've had a full life. Reminds me of R.E.M. singing that song, wanting me to remember. Oh yes, I'll do that. How could I forget? I suppose we wonder, they don't want money, wanting them to have very, very happy lives. You spend your whole life waiting for this sword to fall. But who doesn't? Who can look the future in the eye? The future's all a foreign language. On bad days, the sword of Damocles. Good days, there's no guesswork at all. I know where I am, who I am. You say knowledge is power, but it's not like that. I can't unknow what I've been given. I'm not a butterfly anymore. I'm tied by genome strings. They're tight. I know I won't win any Olympic race. There isn't a perfect me, but I am me, like you are you, and nothing else. I wonder, this is again snatches from the film. It is what it is. No, I don't know. Yeah, wouldn't really, don't really kind of, ignorance is, I'm not saying it's not rocket science. Depends, that, yeah. This after muscular dystrophy drawings by Jacqueline Donaghy. There's a series of drawings involving nets and strings and heavy shapes, like rocks somehow entangled, weighing it all down, anchoring maybe, or holding back. Sometimes. La Coulombe. There's that Jacques Brel song about a dove with a torn wing, a rise and fall in the rhythm. You know you're on a journey that's inevitable, falling forward towards its end. A train you've boarded. Most things no longer matter. There's an enemy to deal with, to confound, to understand, outwit, to confront, accept. Mapping DNA. What I know for certain are wool weavers in Lincolnshire, silk in Leek, cotton in Manchester. The DNA of my past, the fabric of my life. Knitted, unwound, reknitted in some other fashion. Me sitting hands outstretched, holding the skein, my mother winding the wool back into a ball, ready to start again. And then finally, my mother's father was not tall. I recall thinking this when I was no more than 3, as he bent down to give me a chocolate bar out of sight of my grandmother. Funny how things stick in your mind. Something of my DNA marked this moment forever. No conscious choice, some ringing of bells maybe, knowing the combination of my storage unit's lock. This is where we keep the stuff you'll need, always. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was our last poem. Could we have a big round of applause for all of our poets here and online, please? Thanks also to Professor Felicity Boardman and her contributors, which has enabled this dialogue through poetry and art to happen, which enriches all of our understanding. We know we've only just touched the tip of the iceberg. To Claudette Bryanston and the Stamp production team for having the vision to create such an interesting evening, and to Ben Robinson, also from Stamp, for having the foresight to ensure we can all be involved by streaming this event. And above all, to Nigel Hutchinson for his inspiration and his poetry. A round of applause, please. Audience members, you'll see on your chairs there's a little postcard evaluation form. It would really help us if you could fill that in, and when you've filled it in, either leave it on your chair or hand it to someone from Stamp before you leave. If you're watching at home and would like to give us some feedback, we would really appreciate that. You can email catherine@stampproductions.co.uk, and again, Stamp Productions has just one P in the middle. Once again, thank you for joining us for DNA Our Stories. Good night.
And I don't know if this microphone's on, but could we just say a huge thank you to Ross Barclay-Simpson, who stepped in. We're very sorry that Sandra couldn't be with us, and we do send her all our very, very best. But I think you'll agree Ross has done an absolutely amazing job. So thank you so much, Ross.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.